How far will China push the needle of technological innovation during the next 5 years? The answer, my friend, is not blowing in the wind, but in a key meeting taking place right now in Beijing. The 20th Central Committee of the Communist Party of China, or CPC, is convening its fourth plenary session to set the country's 15th five-year plan, the national blueprint, through to 2030. Although the details are yet to be released, signals have been sent that fostering new quality productive forces will be the strategic focus, and that means greater investment in technological innovation, be it AI, humanoid, robots, and biomedicine, among other high-tech industries. Ahead of the meeting, the Central Commission for Financial and Economic Affairs published 8 articles in China's most important newspaper, The People's Daily, with technological innovation being a very important keyword. So why is such weight being placed on technological innovation, and why now? And how will this impact China's economy and beyond amid intensifying friction between China and the United States? Welcome to The Point with me, Li Xin, coming to you live from Beijing. I'm pleased to be joined from Rome, Italy by prestigious Professor Jeffrey Sachs, Director of the Center for Sustainable Development. Early in the morning, thank you so much, Professor, for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
From Singapore by Wang Dan, China Director of the Eurasia Group. Always good to have you, Dan. And also from Singapore for the first time by Professor Gu Qingyang, Associate Professor of Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy at the National University of Singapore. Professor Gu, welcome to the show, and the warmest welcome to all of my guests. So let's start with some of the indices. Again, what has been achieved over the past 5 years under the 14th five-year plan. I know people are saying China is not very good at fundamental research, but good at applying things. But some of the things we have found out, and I'm going to list here, for instance, China has risen to the 10th position in the Global Innovation Index ranking for 2025. That's according to the WIPO, the UN Agency for Innovation and IP. And that is an improvement from 34th place in 2012. So a remarkable jump there. And then China's total expenditure on research and experimental development on R&D, I should say, exceeded 3.6 trillion yuan. That's $500 billion last year. Its R&D intensity approaches OECD area levels and meets the goals laid out under the 14th five-year plan. So I want to go to Professor Sachs there. How do you look at the efforts China put in R&D and the impact it has been able to achieve over the past 5 years?
China is at the forefront of global research and development, both in basic science and in applied research and development. There's no doubt about it. China also makes an extraordinary combination of not only the research and development, which the U.S. excels, but also in production. So China has a remarkable capacity now to turn scientific and technological advances into large-scale production, and production that is at declining costs and that is at a capacity that services the entire world. The green technologies are a very good example of that. China's made enormous advances, not only in the basics of photovoltaics or other zero carbon energy sources, but now is, of course, the world's supplier of those technologies in low-cost production. This is an outstanding feat. It's a remarkable accomplishment. I think we could date this back a decade when China launched the Made in China 2025 program, identifying 10 key technologies that China aimed to excel in by 2025. This was a remarkable success. China achieved that excellence in almost all of the areas, and this will propel China's growth for decades to come.
Ms. Wang Dan, help us put things into perspective. As Professor Sachs just put it, one of the most notable starting point was the Made in China 2025. What prompted the Chinese government to increasingly put so much emphasis on technological innovation? And where are we now in terms of that continuous effort?
So for Chinese government, the number one challenge is always to find a sustainable growth engine. In the past, it could be the accumulation of capital, the deepening of human capital to improve the social infrastructure and digital infrastructure. But overall, the long-term growth cannot just rely on those factors, but it could also leverage on the investment in technology. And that's exactly what the Chinese government has been making effort to in the past 20 years. We see a lot of the development in the past 5 years, but it's not done overnight. In fact, even from the 11th 15 5-year plan, the 12th 5-year plan, we're already seeing the beginning of a lot of the seeds that we are seeing today, like the foundation for the solar industry, for the EV industry. In the beginning, a lot of people thought it's a big waste of money, but it turns out it is actually the start of this great journey that a lot of companies have embarked. And I still remember right after COVID, when those German and American car makers gather around in the Shanghai Auto Exhibition and Beijing Auto Exhibition, they were surprised on how this whole EV industry just all of a sudden come together. It didn't just happen like that. And the same thing happened in AI, like the DeepSeek moment. It also happened in the pharmaceutical industry, also happened in a new material in aeronautics and astronautics. It's all those years of investment of incremental changes that make it happen.
Well, you set the target and you work towards that target relentlessly over the years and pivoting your resources towards that goal. Professor Gu, as I said, from late September last month, China's People's Daily published these 8 articles, right, which was written by the Central Commission for Financial and Economic Affairs, drawing a lot of attention, and was, also picked up by a lot of people. Exactly what was the message that was being sent as the 15th 5-year plan was being formulated in the very last stage? And, if you read the 8 articles, one word stand out very much, which is innovation, or more specifically, technological innovation, and areas such as AI, such as humanoid robots and biomedicine were repeatedly mentioned in these articles. Why is that, and what's behind this stronger push on innovation, especially in these areas?
I think we are now living in an area. I think AI, such high tech, play a critical role. So because now is an era defined by technology, I think it's not just the AI, such a technology. It's not just change how the world works. It's actually reshaping the fundamental logic of China's development. I think that's the reason that 8 articles emphasize much on innovation. Currently, China economy faces 2 major challenges. In the short term, the old growth model that rely on real estate and the traditional drivers, for example, traditional industries, have really reached its limit. In the long run, China must find a more suitable growth engine. I think innovation and technology are the key to solve both problems in short run and the long run. For China, innovation is not just the driving forces for long-term growth, but also a practical tool to stabilize the short-term economy. For example, investment in new infrastructure and R&D facilities can directly boost effective investment and support employment general jobs. At the same time, China is also a clear strategic need. China is now under growing pressure from external tech restrictions exempted from USA. So achieving technological self-reliance has become essential. Without breakthroughs in core technologies, China really cannot secure its long-term development or overcome external containment. So pushing for innovation, you mentioned, it's not just an economic strategy or technological strategy. It's a national strategy. It's very important regarding how China balances short-term pain with a long-term prosperity and
Okay.
manage domestic challenges and international challenges, I think.
From our understanding, Professor Sachs, let me come back to you. It seems that when China is talking about technological innovation, it really is talking about three things. The first is to empower and upgrade traditional industries through, new high-end equipment or through digitalization, advanced manufacturing, improving efficiency, quality, so on and so forth. Second is emerging industries. There are 8 of these, such as new generation information technology, new energy, new material, high-end equipment, marine engineering equipment, so on and so forth. And then there are the 9 future industries, such as metaverse, brain-computer interface, quantum information, humanoid robotics, generative AI, biomanufacturing, future displays, future networks, and new energy storage. How do you look at the areas that are covered here and the 3, big blocks China is identifying in terms of technological innovation?
Let me say that all of them reflect 3 factors that we should keep in mind, 3 fundamental factors that are at play right now. First, we are in a scientific and technological revolution. So China's investing into something that has proven itself to be remarkably powerful. And that, of course, is the digital and AI revolution that's been underway for really 50 years, but with tremendous acceleration in the last 10 years. The successes in artificial intelligence were not universally expected, let us say. Some people said that this would happen, but others were skeptical, but they did happen. So China is investing into what has become an extraordinarily fruitful area for both basic and applied science, the AI revolution. Second is the need for ecological transformation. Let's not forget that we are in a global environmental crisis. We need a new set of technologies, electric vehicles, the batteries, the 4th generation nuclear, the other green decarbonized technologies are a global need. China has become the world's leader in this area, and this will propel both the world and China specifically for the next generation to come. The world needs what China produces. Don't let anyone say China has overcapacity. It has the capacity, the big capacity that the world needs for photovoltaics, for wind power, for electric vehicles, for batteries, for long distance transmission of clean green energy, for the hydrogen economy. So this is a sweet spot because the world needs this. But the third, as was just mentioned by Professor Gu also, is there is a rivalry, obviously, with the United States, but it's also dangerous. The United States weaponized technologies, not only in the literal sense of putting them into weapons, but starting around 10 years ago, putting on bans on exports of technology to China, aiming to find choke points to squeeze the Chinese economy, to squeeze Chinese politics. China is playing, in that sense, a game of national security and resilience to make sure that there aren't such choke points. And this is another factor, clearly, that is at play right now. I wish there were just cooperation between the 2 big economies. I think the United States set off on a wrong path 10 years ago to contain China. It doesn't work. It can't work. It is dangerous, but China's responding to that as well to make sure that it is not behind in critical technologies that would give the United States choke points vis-a-vis the Chinese economy and Chinese politics. So that's a third factor at play.
Meanwhile, as China is trying to overcome the so-called choke points imposed by the U.S. sanctions, China is not being shy about exploring new frontiers. I know we're not science major, we're not engineering major, but I really am very intrigued, and I want to mention two projects here where China has made huge strides in terms of new frontier research, and it's under the category of what China called, when drafting the 14th five-year plan, advanced deployments of major scientific and technological infrastructure. Two examples here. First, in late 2023, and I'm going to go to Wang Dan for this question, China's large high-altitude air shower observatory, a high-altitude cosmic ray observatory, released the precise energy spectrum for the highest energy gamma ray radiation from the brightest gamma ray burst observed to date, a milestone in history. And then another example would be in September 2024, last year, a team of Chinese scientists crafted a super intravital microscope that is capable of seeing clearly the entire three-dimensional interactions of a large-scale cells network at the mammalian organ level. In fact, China listed in the 14th five-year plan a whole host of such advanced deployed sci-tech infrastructure. Wang Dan, what are the significance of these projects? I mean, they are not going to be instantly or immediately applied to boost economic growth, and yet China seems to be determined to go ahead in these areas.
This is quite exciting scientific development. And when we think about the development in human history, it's not just about immediate application, it's also about long-term implication and also spillover in all aspects of our life. So the impact on the society can be huge. Because 2 years ago, LEGO did a survey among primary schoolers around the world, and the number one occupation among Chinese kids are that they want to become astronauts when they grow up. But the number one occupation for American kids are online celebrities. So these
Online
are
celebrities. Okay.
Yeah, exactly, the KOLs. So when you think about the stock difference, it is directly from how these scientific development and money are used and how people see where the future is. So Chinese government is committed to this long-term transformative technology for the future, and that is actually quite foundational for the rest of the world as well.
Professor Gu, do you agree with Wang Dan's take that this is quite fundamental for other countries as well? For instance, how China's economic or scientific research could potentially impact, the fundamental research and possibly application in other parts of the world. Have you thought about that? What would be your take?
I agree with Wang Dan. I think the technological innovation is very important for every country, especially for developing country or global south. So China has this advantage. I believe China has the capability to offer its help to the global development, especially for less developed countries. For China itself, it's also extremely important. We can see some small SMEs, small and the medium enterprises and the traditional industries, they are facing very, very difficult situation. So how we can use the so-called technological innovation, for example, AI plus, to help this traditional industry. I think this is a very, very key important issue for China and also for the rest of the world.
Professor Sachs, that's an extremely important question because China's economy is going through a transitional period where we're trying to go from low quality development to higher quality development, and we are trying to increase the penetration rate of smart technology such as AI. China has the AI Plus national strategy, for instance, but it is expensive, right? It is new technology that is probably risky or uncertain to use, and a lot of businesses are faced with financial difficulties after the COVID period of time. So how do you foresee the challenges in terms of this technological innovation period of time? And is the Chinese government aware of the challenges? How do you think is going to be their approach to encourage enterprises to take on the new technological innovation while still being financially sound and stay in business, basically?
I think that China has developed quite a remarkable ecosystem of innovation. It's different from the U.S. Ecosystem. It is more target-driven and goal-driven, and it's working. The competition is fierce inside China, sometimes driving prices down, and even the cutting-edge companies not having so much cash flow because of this. But I do think that one element of this will be a major expansion of exports to the emerging and developing economies in the coming decade and in the coming quarter century of these new technological advances. China is sometimes told, turn to inward consumption as the next growth pole. Don't export to the United States, in other words, and to Europe. Of course, the U.S. has become protectionist. This is one of the reasons why China is facing these short-term headwinds. But my view is that China will continue its export-led growth. It has high saving. It will invest in the rest of the world, actually lend funds to emerging economies that will buy these advanced technologies that China is developing. This will be a win-win global transformation ahead in which China's technology will play a core role in rapid global growth. So I'm optimistic that this remarkable ecosystem of research, development, innovation, and export growth with support from institutions such as the Belt and Road Initiative or the New Development Bank or the new Shanghai Cooperation Organization Bank will get these pieces in place so that all of this works. And if I may say that what Professor Wang Dang said about the inspiration of children, I just want to say that as a child who grew up during the moonshot of the United States in the 1960s, this transformed our country. Going to the moon. President Kennedy said, go to the moon in 1961 and do it before the end of the decade, a goal that was achieved in 1969. It inspired the nation. It moved forward innovations for decades to come.
And now this is happening in China.
It spurred the semiconductor industry. It spurred photovoltaics originally. It spurred computers, satellite technology, global communications. This is happening in China now. It really works. And I think what Professor Wang Dang said about the views of young children resonates a lot with me.
So how much further is China going to push the needle of technological innovation? Professor Sachs, I'm going to take this opportunity to ask you, the big question of looking into the crystal ball. How strong will the push be, and will there be something new on top of what we have already talked about?
We're in the midst of a golden age of scientific and technological advance right now. Things have worked out better than expected in what machine learning, artificial intelligence, humanoid robots, and others can deliver. This means a deep transformation of our societies. Many questions are on the table right now that will have to be resolved about how our societies work in this new technological age. But China will absolutely be at the forefront of this. This is true in basic science as well as applied science, as well as the actual production of these technologies. the internal vast Chinese market really makes a difference. There are more than 500 million users of AI, generative AI right now.
Right.
The rise within China of the use makes all of this internal market propel these advances at a remarkable rate. So we should be optimistic, but we should expect big changes ahead.
Professor Gu, and I'm going to leave the last question to Wang Dan. Professor Gu, however, very briefly, are we going to see an intensified tech race? I don't want to use the word tech war, but are we going, because China is going to do what it sets out to do, despite all difficulties, and some other countries are not going to be happy about it.
Yeah, I think we are now facing the challenge of geopolitical tensions. So we can say globalization is facing strong headwinds. So this hurt everybody because technology is supposed to share the progress. So the best way for us is cooperation. So we need to respond this kind of geopolitical tensions through more, not less, international cooperation in science and technology. We can see our global economy is facing a very difficult time. So technology may play a big role for economic recovery for everybody, for every country. Technological competition may bring short-term advantage for some countries, but this kind of, I think, technological cooperation will bring long-term benefit for everybody. Working together allows countries, including China and include USA, to pool talents and resources, speed up breakthroughs in key areas, and inject new momentum into the global economy.
Okay.
Everybody needs this kind of a cooperation.
Yeah, well, definitely China is valuing international cooperation. Wang Dan, I'm going to leave you with the last question. Are we going to see a greater tech rival, greater competition in terms of all of this technology? Will things get worse before people can turn around and start sitting down together and work together?
The tech competition can only intensify in the years to come. This is not just about the national security, it's also about a long-term competitive advantage of a country, the positioning of a country. And it all comes down to what government actually make more sense. And the U.S. now seem to be going through this political revolution with all kinds of changes introduced by President Trump. And for China, the policy commitment to technology innovation is quite high. And global investors have bought into this narrative. And I believe the competition will be more fierce, but we'll also see more breakthroughs.
All right, we'll definitely keep a close watch on the situation. But first of all, we'll await the very latest on what's on China's mind for the 15th five-year plan, which will come out in a day or two. Many thanks to my guests, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, Director of the Center for Sustainable Development, Wang Dan, China Director of Eurasia Group, and Professor Gu from the National University of Singapore. Thank you very much for joining us.